Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm the IFC Architect, and today we are doing the BlenderBim add-on release for 230902. Some of you might have noticed that today is not that date. This video is thoroughly late. Apologies, life got in the way, but we're going to do it today, and you can see the amount of changes that have happened and, in a way, have already been improved on. So we're just going to go get into it. BlenderBim add-on new release. The BlenderBim add-on for 230902 has been released with 695 new features and fixes. It's our built environment, helps support the BlenderBim add-on, 100% free and open source software that lets you author and document BIM data fully to ISO standards. So here's Dion's opening remarks. They just tell you the version and the amount of changes, and if you want to get the add-on, you can get it here today at blenderbim.org. So if you go here is the landing page, and then you can just click on Get 230902, and whatever platform you are on. So apparently this works for M2 as well. So if you're running Mac M2, this will work for you. You just click on the button and you will get it. So I'm just going to click on Download for Windows, and you can see it started downloading. All right, in contrast to the previous slightly smaller release, this is another mammoth release. Yes, it is, with upgrades across many aspects of the ecosystem. A huge thank you to all developers, testers, users, and financial contributors. You are making this happen. You are changing the industry. Okay, deep breath, get ready, go. All right, so everything always starts with Dion's Money, an AI image generation of Dion's Money on a Blender, I think, missing the top half. We have a revamped and more user-friendly interface. So this is such a big update. I made a whole completely separate video on this, but you will see this throughout today's video. Essentially, the user interface has gone through a major upgrade. It has undergone significant change to make things easier and more intuitive for new users. A new BIM workspace layout is provided by default, which provides a 3-column layout, outliner, 3D view, and properties that is optimal for viewing large hierarchies of BIM models and long properties, and hides lesser used features like the timeline. So I'm just going to open up Blender. In the bottom right-hand side, it is now going to show which version of the BlenderBim add-on you're running. So here you can see I'm using the long-term release of Blender. And for all these stable updates, I'm going to use the long-term release as the showcase, because I think if you are looking for a stable update, you're also wanting to use a stable version of Blender. So here I'm using 3.3.8 for Blender and BlenderBim add-on version 230902. So in all future videos, if you see, if you want to say, okay, what version is he using? It's always going to be in the bottom right-hand side here. So we can see it there, and you can see this is the new layout. So this is automatically added when you activate the BlenderBim add-on. I should go into more detail in the user interface video, but it breaks it up into this new layout. So this is automatically made. You don't have to set it up. So we have the outliner over here. We've got the 3D viewport, and we have our new we've got our properties panel on the side with our new layout here. So we're going to go into that in a second. And there you can see it's showcased. The remnants of the old import-export nomenclature have been removed, and we have a new file open, new save and save as menu to clearly indicate we work with IFC natively, no longer the blend format. So yes, again, just to emphasize that, when you go to File, you can see instead of import-export, there is new IFC project, open IFC project, and then down here is the Blender new and open file commands. So you have all of these. So when you click on one of these, it's going to load that with the template loaded. So if you have one, if you want an empty metric meters project, empty metric millimeters project, an empty imperial feet project, or a demo project with whatever standard you are using in Blender, and the new project wizard, basically. So let's go back here. This means that common hotkeys have been re-implemented, including Control-N for new file and Control-S for save. Yes. So if you have BlenderBim installed, activated in Blender, it's going to override your Blender controls. So again, I would say designate a specific version of Blender that you use BlenderBim for, and if you use Blender for other things, then you can leave that on the side there. They now intelligently give you options for new IFC projects with project presets for metric and imperial units, as well as save either a vanilla Blender model, an IFC project, or both depending on what you've saved previously. Finally, the default cube light camera is automatically removed when starting a new project. So yes, I just showed this. And yes, if you go back here, by default, there is no camera, cube, and light, which, you know, at the beginning of every one, we just deleted anyway. There is now a new set of property tabs within the Scene panel, clearly dividing functionality into IFC Overview, Object Properties, Geometry and Materials, Drawing Documents, Systems and Services, Structural Analysis, Costing and Scheduling, Facility Management, Quality and Coordination, and finally Vanilla Blender Tools. So you can see it over here. And I'll go into depth in a second. Panels which were previously spread or hidden around multiple Blender locations, example the Object tab, Mesh tab, in sidebar, are now consolidated, renamed, and grouped into logical sections that are recognizable to AEC professionals. Users will now find it easier to discover BIM functionality and clearly differentiate between vanilla Blender versus BIM functions. You can now also Control Tab to toggle between tabs. The work is not yet complete, with work to redesign the material and drawing camera UI, but the fundamentals are there. It is a major change. So let's go back to Blender. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so it can be seen. So you can see there's a whole bunch of new tabs here, and there they are. Project Overview, Object Information, Geometry and Materials, Drawings and Documents, Services and Systems, Structural Analysis, Costing, Scheduling, Facility Management, Quality Coordination, and Blender Properties. I'll go into more detail in the user interface video, but essentially it just makes it much more accessible. So you can see that all the project info is here. And previously we could just say create project, and I just want to warn you that the IFC for EU Steel template is quite large, so it'll probably crash your Blender if you do this. So I normally start with the demo library, so you can either click create project there, or you can use the new file, new IFC project, demo project over there. So if I click that, it automatically loads an IFC project, and you can see all the types have loaded. There they are, including the bunny. And we're just going to hide them for now and collapse that. And our IFC file has come in. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger again. We can go through these individually. So again, you can see if we just collapse all of this, in each tab, there is far less information to deal with. It's all the same information, but now it's just so much more accessible and it is so much more straightforward that you can discover more and you can really go into the detail and the depth of everything before. So here, this is also this hotkey. If I turn on my screencast keys, so you can see what my keyboard is doing. So if I say Control Tab, or if I am here, if I'm on the Properties panel and I say Control Tab, it'll swap between the last panel I was in and the next one. I'd prefer it if it cycled through it, but this is actually very useful. So again, Project Overview, Object Information, Geometry and Materials, Drawings and Documents, Services and Systems, Structural Analysis, Costing and Scheduling, Facility Management, Quality and Coordination, and then your normal Blender properties. So if everything is now located in the Scene Properties tab, and you no longer have to go searching for it amongst all of these different features, basically. All right, let's go into the next one. New friendly icons have been added to aid new users to quickly discover authoring tools, and for existing users to quickly switch to common tools like wall tool, slab tool, door tool, etc. Yes, so these are amazing, and you can see they're expanded there. So they're these on the T panel. So if you press T, it opens and closes that panel, and you can see them here, and you can extend it so that it is small, it's tighter, or you can extend it so that it gives you the definition there. So you can see we have create wall, create slab, create door, create window, column, beam, etc. So because I have the demo file loaded, I do have a version of each of these in here. If you don't have a demo file or if you don't have a library loaded, it's not going to be able to open anything. And you can see wall is already selected there. So I can just from this drop down say, okay, I want wall 200. And I say Shift A, and you can see we've created a wall. And then over here, Shift E, and then we want to create a slab. There's automatically a slab selected. I can press Tab, 2, GX, Tab, create a door. Remember to select the wall and then choose a location, say Shift, and make sure that a door is selected, say Shift A. Same thing for the window, create the window, select the wall, Shift A, create a column, choose a location for the column, make sure a column is selected, Shift A. If we press 7, we can just adjust it. It's sitting on there. And I know this isn't really an anything, but yeah. To create a beam, just make sure a beam selected, Shift A. Put the beam there. A duct, there is no automatic duct segment added to the demo library, but this will change soon and you can create your own one. I will link a video in description where Petru from BIMVoice actually showcases creating a duct and how it works together as it is currently, but this will improve in the future. Same story for the create pipe. There's no pipe segment at the moment. And create elements. This is just your BIM tool. So anything that doesn't fall into these categories, you can now create with create elements. So if we go here, here are all the IFC types. Anything that doesn't have a tool there, you can use create element to create anything else you want, basically. But now everything has a dedicated tool and it's a much faster workflow. So I'm just going to pop those in there again, and we're going to go back to the release. The old annotation panel has been removed in favor of a new workspace annotation tool. The annotation tool now has its own annotation type, manager, and functions similar to the BIM tool, with a number of bugs like type reassignment fixed. In addition, there are new annotation types for symbols and multi-point symbols, useful for setup points, control points, and more. Okay, so again, over here, we've got this new annotation tool. Well, it's the same annotation tool, but it looks a little bit different. And it has been upgraded in a hell of a lot of ways. So obviously, to use it, we need a drawing, which means we need to save the file. So I'm just going to quickly save the file. And we just say save project, or we can just say Control S. And now I've saved that file, so I can create a drawing. So all I need to do is go to the Drawings and Documents tab here, and I click on Drawings. And here you can see it's so simple: sheets, drawings, schedules, references, nothing else. We're not confused with Blender stuff. We're not confused with additional information. We just go to Drawings. There's no drawings found, so we click the drop-down arrow. We want to create a plan at the story, not the origin, and we're going to say add drawing, and there you can see it loaded the drawing. So you can see here it's now categorized them into different categories automatically. So my story plan is there, and we can just say activate drawing view. Then you can see it's been created. I'm going to select the drawing. I'm going to go to the object data properties here and just make it a bit smaller so that we can see what we've drawn. Grab this and make sure your snaps are turned off for this one, and we're just going to roughly locate it there and then turn the snaps back on. So annotation tool, that's what we were getting into. It has been drastically improved. So let's just go check again what he was talking about. The old annotation panel has been removed. So you can see here when we press in on the number pad and we go down to BlenderBim, there is no BlenderBim documentation panel anymore. So that's been consolidated in here into Drawings and Documents. And that is where the annotation tool used to live. Now the annotation tool lives here in the launch type manager tool, and you can see these are all the different kinds of functions we can get out of it. So it's the same tools, but now there are more, and we have more templates to work with, basically. So let's go look at the different kinds of templates, and we can just showcase each one of these elements. So it's the dimension tool, everybody knows. So we click on it, and you can see there's no set template for it. So if we say Shift A, there it is. It is a dimension tool, simple enough to use. That is it. And then the next one is the angle tool. This will measure an angle. You say Shift A. All you have to do is say E, X, and it'll give you an angle. It works as you think it does. So I'm not really measuring anything there, but there we've got 90 degrees. The next one is the radius tool, and we just choose location. So let's say if we wanted the radius of this door swing, we say Shift A, we grab the edge of this tool, and we say G, we snap it there. That's probably inaccurate, but it seems close enough. I think it's supposed to be 1.1. And then we have a radius tool. The next one is the diameter tool. It's the same story. We can go here, we can say Shift A, the diameter, you can measure any round edges or anything you want to know the diameter of. That's 1,000 at the moment. You say, okay, let's just make this a bit smaller so we can see more of this, and I'm going to close the end panel. The next one is the text tool. This one you know, but you can see there's a few set of tags that are automatically loaded now. It's probably going to go into it in the description, so I'm going to show these in a moment. But what has changed, and I think it will be mentioned, is that the text is now added wherever your 3D cursor is. So previously it just added it at the origin of the drawing. So now you can say add, and the text is added exactly where you want it to, which is a huge quality of life improvement. And then if you want to edit the text, you just say Shift E, and then you can write whatever you want, basically. And we say okay. All right, the next one is the leader. This is just a text tool with a line attached to it. We say add, G, E, X. There's text, and then if you can press Tab to edit the line, and you say Shift E to edit the text. All right, the next one is the stair arrow. This is again for stairs, but you can add it without it. And you can just say add, it's just an arrow, and it says up when you print the drawing, basically. Next thing is the level, the plan level. So we can click here, and we can say Shift A, and it'll give us a level. So I'm just gonna say A, rotate 90, and we're gonna give it there. And I'm just going to say GZ to snap it to, which is the bottom of this, which is -300. Say OK. The section level, I think it can display in here, but it's not really made for plan. So I'm just going to say Shift A. There we go. A, rotate 90. Oh, -90. Yes, that's what it looks like, but it's mainly used in section. And the break line, again, Shift A. You can press Tab. Oh, sorry. Tab to edit it and just adjust it however you want. And the break line is always just at the center of the length of the object, basically. So press Tab, press OK. The next item is symbol. So you got set out points. This is what Dion was mentioning in the description. So we say Shift A. It's just going to say SP, but that's a nice point. And then again, we can try out a few of these other ones, control points. I'm just going to showcase it because I don't have a full project to demonstrate it for. And traverse points. Give different points for it. Multi-symbols. Again, I think this will just give us a series. And then a line. So you can see the hidden line or the dashed line has been removed because essentially it is just a line type. So now when you click line, there's a series of types that are added. So there's dashed, fine, thin, medium, thick, and strong. So we can just add each one of those. We can say Shift A. Tab out of it. And then we can just do fine. Just make sure to move your 3D cursor. Thin, medium, thick, and strong. Right, and then we're going to move on from line. We've got batting. Batting has been around for a while. This isn't really new. I think there's only one type. Yeah, so Shift A. So it is huge at the moment. I'm just going to say rotate 90. But you can change this with your CSS. I'm going to say GX. You just stretch it. And then you can say EY to, well, you could say that, G. Apparently not anymore. XV. You can grab this, you can just stretch it, and it will just fill that space up with whatever batting you use. And then after batting, we've got our revision cloud. We're going to go there. There's no type. We're just going to say Shift A. We're going to leave that, and we're just going to bring it over there. And then the last one is the fill area. Well, not the last one, the second last one. We say Shift A. You know what a fill area is. It's called a fill region in Revit or other programs. And it just covers things up, essentially. And you can use it for hatching. You can use it for anything you want. And then the last one is the full arrow. So I don't really have a full, but this works in 3D, essentially. So if I say Shift A, and I grab this edge, and I say GZ, so I'm moving it in the Z direction. So actually, I'm just going to show you in the Z direction. GZ, then it calculates the angle of the fall, and it demonstrates it on the drawing. So I'm just going to say to there, 20 degrees. We're going to go north, and we're going to print this drawing. So I'm just going to say activate view and print. And then you can see all of our various points, setting out points, elements printed, essentially. All right, moving on. To help in bug reporting and for daily users, the commit and version is shown in the status bar. Yes, that's what I mentioned in the beginning. The commit here, so this is the version 230902, and that's the last upgrade, basically your last commit. So EEE844E. Yeah, this is a bit out of date at this point, but it's still good to just go through the updates. All right, drawing and modeling improvements. There have been a lot. There are 3 big changes in the drawings. First, coplanar edges for meshes and tessellations are now dissolved by default. This makes using meshes as a geometry type much more practical in drawing generation. So there used to be this issue where when you printed a window or something with coplanar edges, which means they're just flat, they're parallel to each other, it would triangulate and draw a little triangle instead of draw a square. And now you can see, oh, I wish there was a before and after, but I can show. Now it no longer does that. So if I go to elevation, because this was most common in elevations, so all I need to do is say change this to an elevation view, and this is coming from the south. So we click that, and then you see an elevation view, it's added it. So I'm just going to say print drawing, and I'm just going to change the scale of this. I went to the object dots properties, and I'm going to change this to 7. Yeah, that looks good. So you can see we have the door and the window. So what would happen previously when you printed is that the window would triangulate only a little bit, but it was fairly annoying. And all we need to do now is say activate drawing and create drawing. And now you can see when we printed the drawing, it is a perfect square, or rectangle rather, without any additional lines that were messy and not what we wanted, essentially. So it's quite a cleanup. And you can see here in an amazing drawing by Opening Design by Theory Shaw, Ryan Schultz. And you can see here, this is just a beautiful, very clean elevation, and it looks amazing. And there's minimal additional lines here. All right, let's go back, Control Naught. Secondly, projection line work can now be independently styled from cut line work / cut projection fills. This allows you to style a lot of 2D line work where it wasn't previously possible. So there's a difference between the cut line work and the background line work. The background line work is called projection line work. And now you can distinguish between the two in a large way. So we're going to just demonstrate that. Secondly, projection line work can now be independently styled from cut line work, cut projection fills. This allows you to style a lot of 2D line work where it wasn't previously possible. So this is all done in CSS, I imagine. But yeah, so it's going to distinguish between the cut line work, the projection fills like this gray, and then the line work of things in the background, which is projection lines. All right. Thirdly, there is now support for reflected ceiling plans, RCPs, or just ceiling plans. There is still a lot of testing to be done, but this is one of the major things holding back usage in basic drawings. Agreed. The HLR pre-filtering option teased about in the latest release is now enabled. This may not be such a huge blanket speed upgrade, but depending on your drawing, it may result in faster drawing generation. There has also been some optimization applied when you have a lot of 2D elements in the screen and enable shapely surfaces. So there's it's major speed upgrades, especially if you have a lot happening in your drawing. So probably can't showcase it with this, but let's have a go. First thing we're going to show is a reflected ceiling plan. So we don't have a ceiling at the moment, so maybe we should just do it like this. Grab this and just say Shift-D-Z. And boom, we've got a ceiling of sorts. Well, GZ and GZ. Okay, and then we're just going to go back to the drawing. And we are just going to say we want to make an RCP, add my story. And we click plus. There you can see reflected plan view. Click that. There it is. I'm just going to make this, what was it, 5 or 10. And you can see it's a reflected plan of our other plan, right? So if we just say create drawing, which we can create here, or we can go back to our scene properties and just click on the create drawing button there. When we compare this with our story plan, it's looking up instead of looking down. So if we had something on our ceiling, let's put something there. So for instance, if I duplicate this column and I say, and I bring it up, GZ, so it's no longer cut by the ground floor plan. It's no longer visible from the ground floor plan. And we just want to make it shorter. So we're just going to make sure we're on the column tool, Shift-E, make it that big. And then we can say activate view. You can see it's visible there. And we can say print. And you can see that it is visible there. While if we go to the plan, it is not visible. So reflected ceiling plans, simple, but so essential. And then the next thing was the HLR pre-filtering option. So this is enabled by default. It just increases your drawing speed, basically, but it's very good. And when it's saying here is, there has been some optimization applied when you have a lot of 2D elements and enable shapely surfaces. So shapely surfaces is obviously your texture for your projection. So if you want, so this is concrete, I think at the moment, or it has no relationship. So if I go to geometry materials and I go to materials, you can see it's unnamed. So we can just give it a name. So I'm just going to say brick, for instance. If we print this, it's not going to show us anything. But if we activate shapely surfaces, which is over here. So these are two different ways to calculate the projection pattern, the hatch pattern basically, that is projected and not cut. So we can say calculate shapely surfaces, and we can say create drawing, and then you can see it's now given me the brick hatch as the projection surface. So now that's done way faster. You can see that was nearly instant, basically. All right, let's get back to it. There's also now basic support for perspective cameras. In general, the computation of shading and cut polygons is now more robust. Activating drawings no longer affects non-IFC objects if you're using vanilla Blender objects to enhance your models. Yes. Okay, so when you activate drawings, it culls, basically it hides everything that is not visible in the drawing. So you can see we had that ceiling, which was that duplication of the slab, and it has been hidden, so the camera doesn't have to think about it when it's cutting. It just speeds up optimization and really good stuff like that. So if we just add a generic Blender object, so if I just add a cube, it's going to be unaffected by that, whereas previously I think it was. So if we go here, back to scene properties, and we go to our drawings and documents, and we say activate the model, and we say activate the drawing, you can see the cube is still there. It's not going to show up in the drawing because it's not an IFC object. So if I say print, it's not there, but it's not hidden anymore as well. Right, moving on. Dimensions can now have background fills for readability. Numerical decimal places can now be set to 0. RL and XYZ dimensions in the BIM tools are now length or unit aware. Okay, cool. So this is pretty cool. If we go to our, excuse me. If we go to our plan view, we activate it, and we go to our dimension, and let's say we go into it, press tab, shift D, X, and we overlap it with, let's say, the wall there. And if we print it, you can see it gets obscured by the wall. Obviously the wall's taking priority. So now you can select the dimensions, and if we go to object information, object metadata, and we go to object property sets and give it an annotation set. And in EP set annotation, where it says classes, you just type in fill-bg, and you can just say edit pset to save that. And then when you go back to document drawings and documents, activate the drawing and print it, you can see now there is a opaque background. Isn't that amazing? So let's get back to it. Generating rooms and spaces is now significantly more robust due to a new computation method and can now support things like virtual space boundary elements. Yes, quite cool. Let's do it. So we're going to go down here to our Spatial Tool. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just generate a space using the walls. So we just got to create some walls to begin with. And make sure we're in the story, go to the wall tool, and we're just going to say Shift A. You can see it added a very, very long wall. So we're just going to say Shift E and make this wall shorter till it wraps to the edge. And then over here, we're just going to say Shift A, Shift E, and then we're going to close it up, Shift A, and maybe just make it, I think the length was about 1,000. And snap it there, Shift E. All right, so I'm just going to make this a bit smaller so we can see a bit more of the screen. And essentially there's two ways to do this. Either you can select all the walls. So you could do this in 2D or you could do this in 3D, like that. And then we can select the Spatial Tool and you can say generate spaces from walls. And you can see it generated a space there. So there it is. And then you can see it added the space over there. I'm just going to make these smaller so they don't take up so much real estate. Space 0. And the second way you can do this, and say Control Z, is you just take your 3D cursor and you place it in the center of that space. You don't have to select any walls, and you can just say generate space and it will do the same thing. Isn't that amazing? And it's quite good at it, basically. And you can see if we go above, so 7, the space itself, I'm just going to move it, cuts out the column space as well, which it didn't used to previously do. That's where the robustness comes in, because it only used to do walls in the past. All right, moving on to the next one. When generating 2D body or annotation separate representations, you can now choose to generate the geometry from a detected outline or bounding box. This makes creating 2D plan view diagrams much easier and faster drawing generation. All right, yeah, this is super exciting. Previously, you had to manually adjust this, so I'm just going to go here and say activate the model view. And what I'm going to do is actually create a Suzanne, just like the example. So mesh, monkey, there we go. GZ, put her into the building story for now. And then we're just going to select her. And what we have to do is we're going to turn her into an IFC type. So we just go to the object information tab. I'm not going to make it an element type. I'm going to make her an element, and we're going to make an IFC element proxy complex. And we're going to say assign class. And then we're going to go here to materials, geometry and materials. We're going to go to representations, and you can see there's a few there. So yeah, we're just going to go to representations, and where it says model here, it's a drop down. So we're just going to choose plan annotation, plan view, and we're going to say plus, and then it's going to give us this little add representation box. So we could say trace outline, bounding box, or full representation. I'm going to say trace outline. I'm going to say okay, and bam, it traced the outline. Isn't that amazing? Previously, you'd have to trace this yourself or use some sort of Blender magic to make it work. And now it's there in BlenderBim automatically for you. All right, so moving on to the next thing. A subtle but very important change is that meshes now preserve their quads and n-gons. Previously, meshes were triangulated upon reloading, but that is no longer the case, or this is no longer the case. The shading style is now also stored as part of the drawing style. Yes, so that is part of that drawing upgrade here as well. Is that it no longer triangulates and it keeps it as a square or an n-gon. And if we go here, if we go to the camera view, or this is the camera view, and we go to our object information, inside of our property set, where all the camera information is stored, you can see here is a shading style. So there is a default shading style, which is now stored with the camera. Excellent. Moving on to the next one, a huge quality of life upgrade. Annotations are now created at the 3D cursor. Yes, plan, section, and radius annotations now support prefixes and suffixes and can be rotated. Fixed bug where section arrows would point the wrong way. Text annotations can now be duplicated and now appear on top drawing layer by default. Yes, so again, it's just quality of life. So I'm pressing naught. We're in the 3D view and we just need to activate it to see the annotations. And again, it's what I showed earlier, is if you select the annotation tool, and you want to add anything, it is now added where you select, which previously it wasn't. It would just spawn in the center of the drawing, essentially. So that's quite useful. Everything is automatically on top, so it can't be obscured by any 3D geometry. Also what we want, excellent. So if we go here, we're going to go to our radius annotation, and we can rotate him. He can do whatever he needs to do. So this works the same way that the dimensions worked. You select it, you go to object information, you go down here to object metadata, you go to object property set, and you add a BBIM dimension, and we add that, and then you can see there's a prefix and a suffix location. So I'm going to say pre and fix for each of these. So if we make a space after and before, it should give us a nice space between the elements. And then you can see it is previewed already. Rotate radius 1098 fix. And if we print it, it should showcase as well. There it is. Cool. Excellent. Great upgrade. Next, going on, sheets are now sorted alphabetically, and there is a new hierarchical drawings panel which groups drawings into plans, sections, elevations, etc. sorted alphabetically. This makes it easy to quickly jump to relevant drawings in new projects. Filtering can now filter both drawing numbers, titles, and preserves the hierarchy. Yes. So I've been showing it the whole time. Drawings are now broken into these categories: model view, plan view, section view, elevation, and reflected ceiling plan. It's very useful if you just want to use what is in the applicable area, and it automatically categorizes and sorts them alphabetically. So if I have two floor plans, and let's say this one is ground floor, and I make another one, which is just going to be a plan at my story or at origin, and I call this one first floor, and just activate the drawing, or we activate this drawing, it automatically reselects it. So even though first is actually, I want that to be next, I would probably categorize this like this, use the number, and ground, I would say 0, 0 ground floor. And then if I select, and then you see it's organized it the way I want it to be organized, 0, 1, 2, etc. So very useful, wasn't there before. Yes, it does make it easier. Okay, MEP Services and Distribution Systems Modeling. Okay, cool. In this release, we started laying out the groundwork to make it possible to work natively with MEP elements, ducts, pipes, cables, etc. We've added a couple of templates to create MEP segments or fittings from the type manager. They work very similarly to other profile-based elements like beams. MEP elements created from templates will have ports by default, and ports are automatically adjusted as you change segments, lengths, or move them. Mainly, there are 4 tools currently available in MEP. The add fitting, also available for BIM duct pipe tool from Hotkey, adds fitting based on the current element selection. Currently available fittings are obstructions and transitions. Obstructions will be added if you... Let's showcase this, I suppose. Obstructions will be added if you just have one element selected. It be attached to the side closest to the 3D cursor. It be attached. Transition will be added if you have 2 elements selected and they are parallel to each other. Bends come through next shortly right after this release. Stay tuned for updates. It will try to find and use compatible fitting type. If it couldn't, it will then create a new, but next time it will reuse already created type. It will make sure we'll have types more clean and organized. We will make sure in the future. All right, so let's create some of these types. I'm just going to activate the model view. And we are just going to go to our, let's say, our duct tool. And there are no ducts, so we're going to add a duct segment, type X, and we're just going to say Shift A. And then you can see it's been added automatically. And then it works in the same way if we, let's spatially contain that correctly. So over here, make sure that it is on the ground floor story. There we go. So it works in a similar way to the beam. It has a profile, and we can extend it using these tools. So we could type in the length here. We could say 5,000. I'm just going to delete this cube because it's in the way. Or we could just use Shift E to extend it to wherever we want it. E, 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 E. Make sure you are in the correct location. We can select it, and we can say Shift A, and it will add it wherever it wants to. And if we rotate this, maybe 90, there are no bends at the moment, but we can select this, and then if we select an end, and we say add fitting, it adds a fitting on the edge there. So I can shift this to there, Shift E, select an end, and I can say add fitting. It will add something there. And then bends are currently being created, but we could say Shift A in the meantime, or X. We can say Shift A, and we can say GZ, GY, and maybe make this 600, I think. Shift E. And we've created some pseudo duct elements. The other thing is, apparently we can add a void. So we can go here and we can say Shift O if we want to add a void into this element. So select the void and make sure to select the object and say apply void. And you can create a cut from there. That works similarly to the wall tool. That is the duct tool. And then the same thing for pipes. There is no pipe segment, so we're just going to say add. It automatically adds it with a circular radius. So I'm just going to say Shift A. Again, does wherever it wants it to be. And the same story here. We can add a fitting at the end, and it will add a fitting segment at the end there. And then I think if we have 2 pipes that are 2 different sizes, so if we go to here and we want to duplicate this, I'm just going to say pipe 2, pipe 2, Shift A, say GZ, and just GX, so they're nearby. So if we go to project, we go to geometry, profiles, 8 named profiles, and we want to edit this one, I suppose. Let's make this 200. Give it a radius of 100. Close that. Okay, you can see it changed it. If we get rid of this guy and we select both of these, we can add a fitting, which will join the two. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Anyway, okay. Moving on. All right, which is demonstrated here. You can also regenerate distribution elements currently available from the F3 menu. This readjusts connected elements for the active object. If you moved a segment, fitting, or other connected element, it will auto-adjust the chain of distribution segments with a minimum impact strategy. Segments will extend instead of moving. You can also manually add obstruction and add transition, currently available from the F3 menu and quick favorites. This allows you to create obstructions and transitions with custom parameters. When add fitting, use just default values. Okay. The UI has also been improved so that it will be easier to navigate between connected elements and their ports. More UI is coming. We plan to add viewport decorators that will allow you to see the connections between the elements, flow directions, and other important information right in the viewport without looking for it in menus. I will do an MEP video just covering all of this in depth. I think it has already been updated, but it's just not working ideally right now, but I think it has already been updated. But I think for today, that is all. More detailed and informative IfcTest reports. IfcTester has been upgraded to the latest IDS schema and has had a few tweaks to fix failing edge cases. Facet filtering is now more optimized for faster auditing of larger models. A critical bug where inherited properties weren't validated correctly was fixed. IfcTester now also comes with a significantly upgraded report. This includes a summary of progress bar at the very top, and progress bars for every specification. Progress is now reported in a much more granular fashion, including passing specifications, passing requirements, passing elements, and individual pass-fail checks. Reports also now include applicability, descriptions, instructions, as well as a formatted table to describe failed elements with global ID and tags highlighted to make it easier to select. Design and build management. Yeah, as you can see, it looks really good. It looks really good. I'll dive into this with another video as well, but I think it's at a point where it's quite useful. Okay, IfcTester can now export reports to BCF, including viewports and problematic elements. The PI distribution now includes the XSD. All right, moving on. Detailed documentation for programmers passing IFC geometry. Extensive documentation has been written for how to use geometry trees. So we can go here. It's very good. You can see this is where all the documentation sits. And if you want to read on other things, they're here as well. But yes, for developers, it's very good. Geometry trees are optimized way of spatially querying IFC geometry. Example, what objects are at this coordinate or intersect this ray. And there's a little diagram just demonstrating all the values. There's also documentation teaching how to create basic geometry in the same kind of place. Explaining concepts in detail from placement matrices, context, extrusions, parametric layers, parametric profiles, mesh geometry, and more. This comes with simple API functions to do things like wall from 2 points. There are also new utility functions to quickly generate rotation matrices in NumPy. So if you know how to do this, this is very useful. Standard US steel profile library. All right, yes, so steel libraries. So we can go here to project overview, and we can go into project setup, project library, and we can load the steel library. So we click here. So this is essentially where it is located. So it would be your users, your app data roaming, Blender Foundation, wherever you've got Blender installed, and inside BlenderBim, the BIM data libraries. Right, so that's where it's located. So you can select it there, and you can say select library file. And over here, you can either choose material, profiles, or type product. I normally choose the type product, so you can see there are beams, columns, and members. So if we go to beams, there are a ton of beams, all standard sizes, and you can just load them. So these will be loaded to your types. So if we click here and just choose a few random ones, and we go to types, and we just select the beam tool, then you can see we've got our new standard US sized beams. So if I say Shift A, you see we've got, oh, that's quite an interesting 2 L sections. If we go here and we say Shift A, and just moved here as well. It's similar, I suppose they're close to each other. And over here, Shift A, G. Obviously, these are going to be in imperial sizes standards. So in metric, they probably make less sense. But yeah, US Steel library is loaded. All right, moving on to the next thing. New search panels and spreadsheet reporting. Inspired by IDS, there is a new, simpler, and more powerful selector syntax, which can now be used to construct filters, searches, and smart tags. The search panel has been completely redesigned to use this new system and supports filtering by class, attribute, property, material classification, location type, global ID, or other custom query. This is available with a graphical query builder where you can group queries and save load searches. All right, it's very useful. So let's say I want to select all the walls in this project, right? So I can just go here to project overview, grouping and filtering, and you can see there's a thing called search. So we can add a search group. So I want to say it's a class, right? I want to add a filter for an IFC wall. Simple enough. Search, all the walls are selected. Okay, cool. I want to say IFC window. Search, it's got the window selected. So if you want to deselect the previous thing, just select on nothing and it will select the window. So quick way to search and adjust things, and it's very useful. All right. You can save the searches with that arrow key there. So we can click it there and we can just call this slabs. If you want to get your saved searches, you click on the down key and you say slabs and you say okay, and it will all load it in. So if I say wall here, select my down caret and I say slabs, I say okay, it will replace it out with the search that we wanted. It's very useful if there's something specific that you want to keep going back to. This is very, very useful. Right, the next thing is these searches can also have a color scheme applied to them. An auto-generated color legend may be then customized and multiple properties color-coded simultaneously. These colors can also be saved. Yes, so it's right here, color by property, and we can say color by property, and it will automatically give us a set of colors. So that's it's coloring by I think it's coloring just generically the different classes basically. So this is also like a random class thing. So all the walls have the same color, the slabs do, the ducts do, the endpoints, the beams, etc. Yeah, very useful, especially if you want to just clarify in your drawing. You can also quickly select similar items by shared properties or attribute using the select similar panel. Yes, so under here, we can go to select similar, click on it. We can say we want it selected by name. Okay, cool, name. Name will give you the class basically. So if we select the slab, okay, it'll select both of them. Okay, brilliant. And then if we select the duct, it should select both of them, and the pipe. Excellent. All right. The same search filtering system can now be used with IFC CSV and is also used in all filtering, include and exclude systems such as drawing filters or IFC patch elements. Okay, cool. So this is a big deal. Previously in a drawing, and we go to the attributes and we go to our, let's object property sets is what we want. Over here in the include and exclude filters, you used to use a certain syntax, which is a way of writing things to demarcate whether you want to exclude or include things. So it used to have brackets and everything, and it has now changed completely to be more natural language. So now if I want to exclude the walls, all I need to do is type in IFC wall, and then I can say tick, go to my documents and activate the drawing, and you can see the walls have disappeared. So it's a lot more straightforward now. All the brackets and all the nonsense is kind of gone. We want to look at a bunch of examples. Malt goes into a little bit more detail with this in another tab, but let me finish reading this. The element query syntax now supports counting, fetching style data, and specific structural elements, going straight to the story and bypassing intermediate spaces. Yes, okay, cool. This makes IFC CSV much more flexible. In addition, IFC CSV now supports custom table headers, multi-column sorting, grouping by value, group operations such as count, sum, average, concatenate, etc. Custom values for null and Boolean fields, and a summary row for total count, averages, etc. Very useful if you're doing quantities. You can also specify custom formatting functions, example force uppercase, lowercase, imperial formatting, etc. Columns can now be easily reordered. IC CSV can now export to 3 formats: CSV, XLSX, and ODS in the BlenderBim add-on interface. There's also now Panda support when used programmatically. All right, yes, so it's very useful. You can pull out a lot of information. This is essentially doing what Kun's BlenderBim spreadsheet editor was doing, or is still doing. It's still a little bit difficult to use, but I will have a separate video for this in detail at a later stage, but it's much more useful now. So I think if we go here, We can go to quality and coordination, and we can come down to collaboration, and you can see the spreadsheet, import, export. And we can have the IFC file that we want to import, export from, add search groups, add attributes, export to CSV. And we can take all the quantities and all the values from the drawing, from the model, and push it to a spreadsheet, basically. All right, next thing is detailed documentation, but the new selector syntax is now also available. Yes, there we go. Okay, cool. I think this is better. Yes, here we go. Here are all the examples of the syntaxes and what you want to do with them. So if you want specific examples, they're all found here. And then it shows you some exporting abilities you can get out of this new exporter. So here it's got name, description, width, height, count, operation. Brilliant. All right, moving on. Fundamental features built using Brickschema. Thanks to work by Riley Wong, who's the latest Google Summer of Code student. The Brickschema module has seen a large upgrade. Brickschema is a semantic structure and ontology designed to represent relationships between building services. So a lot of updates have happened since he started working on this, or she, Riley. The Brick module now lets you save as changes to a selected file. There is now a panel to manage namespaces, improved utilities to add Brick entities, update their properties, and edit relationships. There is now a Brick undo redo system. All right, yeah, so it's in the same position, I think. So it's in facility management, and in operations and maintenance, there is a Brickschema project where you can create a project, load a project, and have references, essentially. Created a Brickschema IFC classification system for basic IFC types, and mapping to brick types can be inferred automatically, but others may need to be classified before mapping correctly. And just examples of things being loaded into Brickschema and being sorted. Most uniquely, updated the ability to assign IFC references and convert IFC to brick. IFC files will be saved with references to brick URIs, and brick files will be saved with references to IFC identifications, which is brilliant because more operability is better for everybody. All right, moving on. Critical bug fixes. A critical undo sync bug was addressed when operators were invoked. The ID tracking system was also redesigned, which should fix a number of highly subtle undo bugs. An oversight meant that a number of operators were simply excluded from the undo system, which is now resolved. Finally, the undo system now understands undo until a point in history, which makes the function now possible, and additional fixes of a number of undo bugs that occurred when toggling edit mode. These types of bugs led to corrupted model sessions that are incredibly frustrating for users. Also fixed a bug where Blender objects couldn't be deleted with the X key. Yes, so this last point is probably the most important one. It wasn't so prevalent, but every now and then there was an issue where if you undid something, you couldn't delete it, or it wouldn't remember that something was deleted. So it would be permanently added to your file. Very, very rare, but now hopefully permanently gone. But yes, this is amazing. All right, next, construction sequencing and planning upgrades. There is a new status panel to manage, hide, show, etc. simple statuses such as new, existing, demolished, and more. To overcome shortcomings in IFC, there is now an EPSet status to provided to, and you can copy enumerated properties. Yes, this is quite awesome. So if we go here and we just activate the model, instead of using the drawings to adjust the statuses, there is a new property type. So if we go to object information, and we come down here to property sets, there's a new property set called EPSet status, status, which you can add. And all it has is whatever the status is, or you have a user defined status. So if I say this is existing and that's it, we're gonna still keep it. And I say this wall is, if we add an EPSet status, and I want to say this one is new, and I say this wall is, just add another status, existing, and I want to demolish that. And I say this wall is existing and demolish that as well. So we click that. Now we can go to our costing and scheduling tab. I'm just going to drop these other guys, and you can see where it says status. So we can say enable status filters. And if we select the statuses, we can select what's demolished. We can select what is existing. We can deselect it. We can just select the existing. We can just select the new. And it allows us to adjust things without having to go into a drawing, basically. All right, you can now save and load 4D animation color schemes. Cost schedule UI cleaned up and is now easier to edit sequence relationships. You can now constrain construction resource work or a number of resources used. It is now easier to edit productivity data. You can show derived schedule work or parent resource, and the resource tree now looks much nicer. It looks way better. Soon I will do a video on this. Until then, Yasim or Sigma Dimensions is an excellent channel. He will be in the description, where he goes into in-depth stuff about costing and scheduling specifically, but a lot more other stuff. And he's gone into a lot of depth with that. And he's in fact done a lot of the commits that have helped develop this program, or the majority of commits for the specific function of BlenderBim. All right, so much more. It's hard to capture absolutely everything which has changed, but here are a few more stragglers. More natural wall insertion when adding walls. Yes, it feels more natural. BCF projects may be closed, unloaded. Excellent. IfcClash now stored graphical clash snapshots again. Excellent. Fix critical crash in ICDiff if comparing non-geometric models. Brilliant. Type Manager now shows updated profiles after editing them. That is very useful. Fix cross-platform external styles. IFC OpenShell installation to AWS Lambda and Google Colab is now documented. IFC SphereJock has now been repackaged to work with the latest SphereJock. That's brilliant. And that will be in the future. That's quite awesome. Inverted normals on generated frameless panel balustrades are fixed. You can now press tab to edit more things like roofs and railing parts, and F2 to rename grid axes. Roof and railing types no longer hard-coded. Yes, so that's actually quite cool. Maybe we can showcase that. So I'm just going to go here. And we are going to select, because there's no railing tool yet, create element. We're going to select we're going to go here to the waffle grid. We're going to go here. We're going to go to railing type. Railing type. We're going to go here. We're going to go to the drop down. We're going to go to railing type. And we're going to say create new type. Balustrade. Type template is going to be a railing. And type X is fine. So we can go there. And we can say Shift A. And it adds a railing. And now you can edit this with tab, which just makes things so easy. So easy. Select the edge there, say EX, tab. It just makes it easy and brilliant. All right, and then the same thing for roofs. We can go here. Make sure we're going to go here. We're going to choose a roof type. And we're going to choose I'm going to go with a hipped roof or a hipped gable roof. And we're going to make sure we have a roof type template. Save it. There it is. Go there, roof type, Shift A, GX. So this has been possible for a little while now, but now you can just press tab and GX. And a lot of these tools are, so it gives you a preview of the roof as you're editing it. And it can make some pretty crazy shapes, which would take a while to model, I'll be honest. There's our roof. All right. IFC 4x3 now uses the most official IFC 4x3 version, IFC 4x3 edition 1, transparently instead of an outdated version. I didn't know that. That's good to know. Improved shape testing debugging, which now considers 2D geometry to prevent false positives. Always good. Fixed critical bug with merge project IFC patch recipe, creates a duplicate contexts. That's very important. Offset object placements can now toggle where the rotation is applied before or after translation. Always good. Deleting single objects in an array or removing an array now gives the users options on how to handle the loss of parametric data. Array children can now also be locked or follow their parent. Just a level of control that is needed in an array, and that's already available in a lot of CAD tools. But yeah, now it's being added. Been added. Point representations and non-grouped annotations are now loaded, so you can load survey points, COGO points, from civil software such as 12D and Civil 3D. There are also now symbols for survey points, traverse points, control points, and spot elevations. Yes, which I showed in the 2D. Types can now be renamed from the type manager. That is just so nice. It's so much nicer. It's one click instead of 5. You can now use queries to load in library assets. I didn't know that. I'll actually have to check that out. Individual projects can now have their own preset templates distributed with them. Yes, that's brilliant. UV texture, so it's now stored with the drawing, basically. UV texture support is added for tessellated face set geometry. Brilliant, yeah. Some work has been done to implement scale-dependent map conversions from IFC 4x3. Very good. Extract elements recipe is now more robust when appending invalid type occurrences. Also good. Linked IFCs can now have the selectability toggled. Very good. There are now IFC operators for changing object origins. Yay! You can now see how many times a profile is used and purged unused profiles in the profile manager. Very useful. Quantities can now be set on type elements. Brilliant. So you can set it once on an element instead of having to recalculate it for everything. Converting objects to tessellations now auto purges parametric materials for convenience. Also very good. IfcClash now works again on Windows. Brilliant. All changes can be seen here on the Git page. And you can see there's a hell of a lot more recently. And credits in order of release. This is everybody who's worked on it. As you can see, there's Dion, he's the main developer. Andre is the full-time developer that's working, full-time paid developer that's working for it. Signum and Dimensions, who I mentioned, Yassim. He's the one who has the YouTube channel, which will be linked in the description. Riley is the one working on the Brickschema. Gregorius is a long-time contributor and user. Thomas is the main developer for IFC OpenShell, which BlenderBim is based on. And Dirk, I don't know you, but thank you very much. Carlos, Trashman, Bruno, everybody, thank you so much. You can see everybody who has contributed. And also here are all the donors since the last release. And thank you, everybody. Excellent updates, amazing updates. BlenderBim is incredibly powerful, and I hope everybody starts using it more and more. Thank you for watching. I hope this was informative, and a few other YouTubers have covered this, so there will be links in the description if you want to see different perspectives on this. I think the more the merrier. Have a wonderful time and have a great day. Bye.